Hey guys, so today we're checking out the Skyjacker 2.5-inch front, 1-inch rear coil spacer leveling kit, fitting all 2020 and newer Gladiator JTs, excluding the Mojave models. Now this kit will be a great addition to your Gladiator if you're looking for an affordable way to get some better capability for your JT, whether that's some better ground clearance or fitting a larger tire for some better performance off-road. This will also be a great pick if you're looking to level out the factory rake, creating a more aggressive stance and a more defined appearance to the truck. This kit will feature spacers for the front and rear, giving you that 2.5-inch lift in the front and again the one in the rear. Now that will bring up the nose of the Jeep, allowing you to crawl over obstacles a little bit easier and fit up to a 35-inch tire comfortably inside the wheel well. Now this kit will also feature accommodating components like longer sway bar end links and shock extension brackets to keep the factory drivability. The spacers and shock brackets will be made of a heavy-duty steel material, and it will have a nice textured black powder coat finish on top to resist any rusting. Now, supporting components will also be durable as well, including the tough sway bar end links with long-lasting bushings compared to the factory ones that can tend to get brittle over time. The bump stop extensions will also have a solid heavy-duty plastic construction, making sure that they hold up as well. This kit will be generally affordable for a leveling kit, coming in at roughly $425. Now when shopping around for lift kits or leveling kits, usually the rule of thumb is that the more components that they come with, usually the more expensive they are going to be, and vice versa. Now this kit will be right in the middle, being pretty inclusive, but it's not going to include every single bell and whistle like upgraded shocks or additional correcting hardware like a track bar relocation bracket or brake line brackets. However, in this case, it's not necessary, so I think if you're trying to save a couple of bucks while still getting the appearance and capability out of your Gladiator, then this is a great option. This will be a 2 out of 3 wrenches on the difficulty meter, and it will probably take you about 4 hours to get the job done with some pretty basic hand tools. At this point, we can head over to the shop and check out a detailed breakdown of the install. So that's gonna wrap it up for me. Let's go ahead and jump into it.
Tools required for this install include an impact gun, an air gun, a drill, an electric ratchet, a couple different sized hand ratchets, a 13, 14, 18, and 19 millimeter wrench, a 10, 14, 18, and 19, and 21 millimeter ratcheting wrench, a hanger, a pry bar, a 1/2-inch drill bit, a few different size extensions, a 14 millimeter swivel socket, a 10, 13, 14, 15, 18, 19, and 21 millimeter sockets, a swivel adapter, and then a 6 and 8 millimeter Allen bit, and a clip remover tool. What's up guys? Today we're installing a lift kit on our Gladiator, so let's get started. So our first step is to disconnect our bolt holding in our track bar on the passenger side. It's gonna be a 21 millimeter bolt. It's right below our sway bar here. We have a tab with a welded nut on the back that's gonna grab so we don't have to get a wrench on the backside. We'll just get our 21 millimeter socket on the front and remove our bolt. So now our next step is to remove our sway bar end link. We have an 18 millimeter bolt on the bottom and an 18 millimeter nut on the top. Now I'm going to be using an 18 millimeter ratcheting wrench for the bottom since there's not enough room for a gun. And then we can also remove our tab with our welded nut. And then for the top, we can just grab an 18 millimeter socket on an impact gun to take that nut off. And then we can just pop our end link out and do the same thing for the other side's end link. So our next step is to disconnect our lower shock mount. We have an 18 millimeter wrench we're gonna put on our nut side and an 18 millimeter ratcheting wrench for our bolt side. So next we can disconnect our lower shock mount. I'm grabbing an 18mm wrench for our nut side and an 18mm socket for our bolt side. And now we can go up to the top of our shock and disconnect our other bolt. It's gonna be that same 18mm socket. And then we can do that same thing on the other side. So next we can pop out these two clips as well as this nut that's holding on our bracket, holding our brake line. So I'll grab a clip remover tool to pop these two clips out. And then we can grab a 15mm socket to remove our nut on the bracket. So next we can pop out this push clip up here, as well as our connector to our four-wheel drive actuator. So I'll get a clip remover tool for our top clip. And then we just need to pop out this little white tab and then press down on it to remove our connector. So I'm gonna grab that clip tool just to pop that out, and then we can disconnect that. So now we can begin to lower our pull jack to free up enough space to pull our spring out. And then we can do that same thing on the other side. Now our first step is to install our spring spacer. So we're gonna grab our isolator and wiggle that off. And then we'll be putting our isolator on the bottom of our spacer. And then we can slide that back up into place. The isolator is going to be able to hold onto that well enough where we don't have to hold this. So then we can just get our spring and put it in. So next we can reinstall our spring. Now on the bottom side, we're going to have our bump stop extension. That's going to go on the bottom. So we're going to slide that in and install it as one unit. So next we can remove our brake line bracket because we're gonna have to get a hand up in here to thread a nut on the bottom side of our bump stop spacer. So I'm gonna grab a 10mm ratcheting wrench just to break this bolt loose. And then we can unscrew it the rest of the way by hand. And then we can pop that bracket out of place. So next we can take our Allen head bolt with a flat washer and drop it through the top of our spacer. And then on the bottom side, we can get our hand in there to get our nut on. And then we can grab a 5mm Allen head bit for our top bolt. And on the bottom, we can grab a 14mm swivel socket, and then we can tighten our bolt down. And then we can reinstall our brake line bracket. And tighten that bolt most of the way by hand. And then we'll grab our 10mm ratcheting wrench to finish it off. Now at this point, you're gonna wanna catch up with what we've done on this side, on the other side, so that we can start to raise our axle and install our shocks. Now our next step is to install our lower shock mount extension bracket. Now there's a hole in the bottom of the mount that you are gonna have to drill out to a 1/2 inch. Ours has already been drilled out in a previous install. However, you would just need a 1/2 inch drill bit just to open up that hole. So then our bracket, the curved side is going to be facing the front. And then from the bottom, we can add our bolt with a flat washer, followed by another flat washer on the inside, and then our locking nut. For our next bolt with a flat washer, and we also have this crush sleeve that's going to go in the middle of our mount. Slide that in. Slide our bolt through to the other side. And then on the other side, we'll just add another flat washer, followed by our lock nut. And then to tighten down our side bolt, we'll be using a 19mm socket and a 19mm wrench. And now to tighten up our side bolt, we'll be using a 19mm socket and a 19mm wrench. And now to tighten up our bottom bolt, we'll be using a 15mm socket and a 15mm wrench. So now we can reinstall our two brake line brackets. So we'll reinstall our factory 10mm bolt. Then we can tighten that down with a 10mm socket. And then we'll reinstall our two push clips. And now coming to the bottom, slide our bracket over our stud and reinstall our factory 15mm nut and tighten that down with a 15mm socket. And next we can reconnect the harness for our four-wheel drive. And then we'll press that white tab in to lock it into place. And then we can reinstall our push clip. Next, we can reinstall our factory shock. So we'll get it up into our top mount first. We'll get our bolt, a couple threads. And then we can line it up into our bottom mount. Raise our axle a little bit just to line up our hole. And then we'll be reusing our factory lower bolt and our factory nut on the other side. And then we can tighten our top bolt down with an 18mm socket. And then on the bottom, we'll grab an 18mm socket with a swivel adapter and an 18mm wrench to tighten that down. So now we can reconnect our two lines by popping our clips into place. Next, we can install our new sway bar end links. So we have a bolt with a washer going through one side, and then a flat washer, and a locking nut for the other side. And then for our bottom mount, we're going to be reusing our factory hardware. So we'll slide our bolt, and then we'll get our nut that's welded to a tab on the other side. And then for our bottom mount, we're going to be using an 18mm ratcheting wrench to tighten this down. And then for the top, we'll get a 19mm wrench on our nut side and a 19mm socket on our bolt side to tighten this down. And then we can repeat that whole process on the other side. So now moving on to the rear, we have to remove our shock. We've got a 21mm bolt and nut on the bottom as well as the top. So I'll grab a 21mm socket and a 21mm wrench to get these out. So now once we have our shock removed, our next step is to come up to our brake line bracket, remove this 10mm bolt, and pull our bracket out of the way. So our next step is to remove our sway bar end link. We have an 18mm nut on the bottom and an 18mm bolt on top. So we'll grab an 18mm socket for our top bolt. For our bottom ball joint, We're going to be using an 18mm ratcheting wrench with a 6mm Allen bit to prevent our ball joint from spinning. And then we'll grab our 18mm socket for our top bolt. And then we can do that same thing on the other side. So now we've lowered down our axle to get enough room to pull our spring out, so we can pull that out now. So our next step is to remove our brake caliper to relieve some of this tension on our lines. So I've got a caliper hanger I'm going to throw into this hole up here. And then we have two 10mm bolts that we can remove to remove our caliper. And then we can wiggle this out of place. And then we can hang that up on our caliper hanger. And we can pop our ABS wire out of these little clips because we do have a lot of slack on that one. And now once we have everything removed that we need to remove on this side, we can do that same thing on the other side. So now we can install our spring spacer into our factory spring and reinstall it. So we have this smaller circle on the bottom that's going to go into the hole in our isolator. And then we can slide that whole unit up into place. So next we can reinstall our caliper and reconnect all of our brake line connections. And then we'll tighten those up with a 10mm socket. And then we can remove our hanger. And reinstall our bracket. And we'll tighten that up with that same 10mm socket. And then we can reconnect all of our clips. Next, we can reinstall our factory sway bar end link. So we'll get it into our bottom hole. And then we can reinstall our factory bolt. And we'll get our factory nut on the bottom. Now we can tighten down the top with an 18mm socket. And then on the bottom, we're gonna get an 18mm ratcheting wrench with a 6mm Allen bit just to prevent our ball joint from spinning. Next up, we can reinstall our factory shock. So we'll get it into our top mount first and get our nut on the back side. And then we can get that into our lower mount. You might have to raise or lower your axle a little bit just to get it into that bottom mount. And then we'll get our nut on the other side. And now both of our bolts and nuts are 21mm. So we'll grab a 21mm socket and a 21mm wrench to tighten these down. Now at this point, we can repeat that same process on the other side. So that'll wrap up this review and install of the Skyjacker 2.5-inch front, 1-inch rear coil spacer leveling kit for your 2020 and newer Jeep Gladiator JT, excluding the Mojave. Thank you for watching, and for all things Gladiator, keep it right here at extremeterrain.com.